and welcome to Labour Lens. I am Sharon Ijason. On this week edition of the program, we'll be focusing on workers in the tertiary institution and the challenges that they are faced with. We also have other news stories for you. We will be right back. The Senior Staff Association of Electricity and Allied Companies held its triennial National Delegate Conference with the theme, Partnering for Higher Productivity and Industrial Peace.
With the help of the Honorable Minister of State Power, here present, and Chairman of this occasion, SIAC, was able to resolve that matter to the benefit of both the company and the workers. Leading to that was payment of another kind of severance package to members of our union or unions that were part of those affected in the restructuring that followed. Hitherto, the company did not want to pay, but with intervention of the unions led by SIAC, they have paid fully to the tune of over 508 million naira.
Government appointees at the event spoke about the role of electricity workers in nation building.
The union will work along with government, as they have always done, to improve the situation of things in the industry and even our economy. Because light, we all know, when God created the world, he said, let there be light, and he says all of you should be there. So you are creations of God himself. If you fail us, you have failed God, and you know what happens to you when you fail God. Who wants to fail God? Hands up. So please don't fail God. Let us have light by working together and working hard enough to keep this thing going so our economy can improve.
This Congress that you have affords you the time and the rare opportunity to take stock of what has happened, to evaluate your leadership, only imparts the workforce of the sector, but also there are joining components to the sector, the small-scale industries, even when they are not in power. Without electricity, this economy cannot move forward.
The newly elected ESCOs promised to work in accordance to the union law, to be transparent and prioritize the welfare of the union. The Industrial Training Fund has urged Nigerians to equip themselves with requisite skills, adding that unemployment and poverty will be reduced if this is promoted amongst youth.
For the empowerment program, because before now, a lot of us are just at home, doing nothing. But seeing this opportunity and grabbing it at once means a lot. For me, I'm into jobs fully now. I operate at different levels, and I know that same goes for everybody. So we want to say a very big thank you for this opportunity.
At the graduation of the 2021 National Industrial Skills Development Program, Nigerians were advised to take advantage of the numerous policies of the federal government that were designed to boost the economy and improve the standard of living.
Encouraging our youths to come out, take advantage of all the opportunities that they have. It may not just be in ITF. Federal government has some other programs that they can key into. But I encourage you to join hands with us so that we can develop our skills and Nigeria will be better off for it. Let's not stay idle. Let's get engaged, diligent, and then God will bless the work of our hands.
They should learn to embrace skills. Skill is the new technology now. Skill is the way to go. They must acquire skill and empower themselves. And that is why this program is put in place, not only to give them the skills, but also to give them the startup pack with which they can start life. And for the many of them that want to grow on the job, they will also grow to become employers of labor too.
The program had 100 beneficiaries who were also given startup packs. In Incessant strike by members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, and the non-academic staff unions, NASU and SANU, are usually quoted with good intentions but with many collateral damages. Nigerians, especially students and business owners, have become wary as they bear the brunt on many fronts. Reacting to the statement by the Nigerian Labour Congress NLC that the presidency should intervene, some workers in tertiary institutions stated their grievances.
Students and teachers are partners in the business of knowledge production. So on a daily basis, students are eager to come back to classrooms. The lecturers are also willing, to engage students. But how do you continue this kind of engagement with your conditions of service remaining the same in the last 12 years? So it's really a challenge. Keeping students out of classroom, but also lecturers also feel the brunt. So they are excited, they want to come back to school, but the conditions must have to change.
Another challenge we are having is even Ministry of Communication, where you have a NIDA that is supposed to do all the tests of the UTAS and the rest. They are neither here nor there. Reports have it that the test went smoothly and it's called A, what you call excellence. Anything, when we grade students, the students who score 70 and above is an A student. This one even went beyond that, but the next thing is you begin to hear all manner of stories of this and that. They are not showing any sincerity or purpose that they really want to address the issue. Then you equally listen to the Minister of Labour. Earlier he said he wasn't even aware that as we went on strike, all manner of claims and the rest. How long will it really take a proper discussion to happen?
The non-payment of 2 years of minimum wage arrears. Federal government increased the minimum wage and they have paid all the parastatals, all the ministries and parastatals coming to the universities. They fail to pay the arrears, while others have gotten their arrears, even the implementations. Up to this time, we are still waiting for government, and we have engaged them severally.
Some of the demands by ASU are refusal of the federal government to implement the 2019 renegotiated agreement, refusal of government to adopt the University Transparency and Accountability Solutions UTAS, the need for increased funding for state universities, and the non-payment of withheld salaries, check-off dues, and promotion arrears. NASU and SANU demands are payment of arrears of minimum wage, inconsistency in Integrated Personnel and Payroll Information System IPIS, payment of earned allowances, non-payment of retirement benefits to retired members, neglect and poor funding of state universities, delay in renegotiation of FGN, NASU and SANU 2009 agreement. I met with Godwin Moses and other business owners in the university community. They lament over low patronage following total collapse of activities on campus.
I want my government answer those people so that we, as the shop, is to get something to pay government. The end of the day for shop on the NEPA. The end of the day, shop as now it don't expire. Government is not going to say stop to paying shop or stop to do pay NEPA. All those things. The end of the day, then the owner of the shop must collect the money. NEPA people must collect money for the NEPA. So where then go see the money and pay for this? Why government not answer those people? So that at the end of the day, everything is in order. Are you get? So the students now in the school are supposed to finish, they say 5-6 years. Some people finish 10 years, 11 years. And some of them have pregnant now. Even there's one university girl that I knew towards my side. Is pregnant.
Due to students, because during, before the strike, it was even the students that used to patronize us. So after they left the campus, everywhere is kind of dry and bored. So that's just it.
So what do you want the government to do?
And they should please quickly attend to the union so that the students can come back to school.
With the prolonged strike, it can be said that university students in the country have lost one academic year, which is not recoverable. On the profile interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the General Secretary of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Comrade Emmanuel Ugboaja. He brings us up to speed on why the Congress needs the presidency to intervene on the issues that the tertiary workers are faced with. We will be right back. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Can you bring us up to speed on the reason why Congress decided to intervene in the strike action by workers or union members in the tertiary institution? I am aware that about 3 or 4 of them are actually members of NLC, and the Congress decided to ensure that the presidency intervene in the matter in the next 21 days. Can you bring us up to speed why this is important at this point in time?
Yeah, it's an open secret that the tertiary education sector has been facing a lot of challenges, and these challenges have been difficult to manage in terms of having them resolved in spite of several meetings, MOUs and MOAs that have been signed. And it behoved on us as a responsible center to have a conversation with our affiliates that are involved in this state of affairs to find out what the real issues are and how we can get about getting an acceptable solution. So it was on the basis of this that the president of NLC, Ugboaja, convened a meeting of our affiliates that are involved in this situation. And we had a meaningful dialogue. We had clarity as to what the issues are and what has been holding on. Is an open secret that agreements have been reached, memorandum of understandings have been reached, and memorandum of actions have been signed. Till none has been honored by the principal party, the employer, which is government in this instance. So at the end of the meeting, it was agreed that there was a need to escalate the situation to the level of the Labour Center and then to the level of the presidency so that we can have some coordinated response because it was obvious to all that the representation from the Ministry of Education had not been of the needed quality and standard. And therefore, if we're to really take care of the situation, then there needed to be a direct intervention from the presidency. And that clearly was the recommendation coming out of the meeting. And understanding also that the NLC will have to play a responsible role moving forward in the situation.
Okay, the Academic Staff Union of Universities strike is the most populous at this point in time, owing to the fact that it's exactly 2 months since they embarked on this industrial action. As the General Secretary of Nigerian Labour Congress, how would you rate the reaction of the government towards ensuring that their needs are met, especially when it comes to the Memorandum of Understanding that has not been met with, and also the issue of IPS?
There's nothing to assess. You have an agreement, you implement the agreement. That is what will be the yardstick for assessment. As long as you've not implemented the agreement, there is clearly nothing to assess. You have a signed agreement, implement it. If you were still dialoguing or trying to find an acceptable ground, then you can talk about what would be the acceptable ground. Right now, you have a signed understanding. Respect the signed understanding. If you don't have capacity to respect the signed understanding, then you get the other party, you show cause why the other party should adjust.
But from my interactions with government, it seems that the government does not have the capacity to pay pay the amount of money that the lecturers are demanding for. Even though government is a continuum, they believe that right now the government can't afford to pay some of these allowances that is actually on the table.
That's not correct. You cannot refuse to pay people what they have earned. That is clearly against standard employment practice. You can owe a debt, but you are obliged to pay what a worker has earned. Whatever you have agreed with the worker, that is his wage. You are obliged to pay him his wage. He's not a slave. Not even in the tertiary institution will you turn workers to become slaves. Once someone has earned the allowance, you have to pay. If you don't have resources to pay now, it means you're owing him a debt, but you have to pay. When you then renegotiate and you then begin to talk about ability to pay in future or ability not to add extra income or extra wage to yourself, it will be still subject to negotiation, subject to the facts you put on the table. But once you have a signed agreement with regards to what the person is entitled to, you can't turn back and tell him. It hurts more when people talk about figures. What was ₦1 billion at the time that was signed is what almost 300% less now, because you know that at the time that agreement was signed, if the naira was 150 to the dollar, now is $1 to about 600 naira. So clearly, you wouldn't even be talking in terms of the figure that was agreed on at that time. You'll be talking about multiplying it by 3 or 4. So when people then talk about negotiating downward a figure that has clearly lost its value, you then wonder from what perspective is that reasoning coming from.
If you agree with me that inflation has eroded most of the benefits of these allowances, what would be your take on the minimum wage? There are still some state governments that have not implemented the consequent adjustments towards the increment of the minimum wage. And vis-a-vis even some government parastatals, even in private practice, not just government. How would you react to this?
It's unfortunate that in Nigeria you talk about government breaking laws. There is no place in the world government breaks laws. The basis of government is to help enforce laws, is to help keep society together based on rules and laws. When a government that should help enforce laws break the laws, then clearly we are moving into very dark times. We are moving into a very dark arena, very dark terrain that should not be encouraged. So we are not even talking about the value. Like you noted, the inflationary trend that has eroded what was otherwise a gain at the time it was signed. That challenge is not even what is being discussed. They are discussing arrears of wages. They are discussing refusal to obey the law. And it's unfortunate. The mandate of the worker is not to enforce laws. That is a function of government. So when you begin to push the enforcement of laws to the worker, then we are you want the worker to resort to self-help. And that clearly shows a breakdown in government. And we're trying to make sure that that is not the scenario here. We're trying to make sure that that is not the situation. Government needs to be government. And government needs to make sure that laws that have been passed are respected. So if government then starts by observing laws in the breach, then the society is in trouble. So clearly for those who are toying with the implementation of the minimum wage, respecting the minimum wage, is an unconscionable situation, something that shouldn't be mentioned, and that people that answer operators of government machinery will come out to mount flagrant of relations laws is something that should not be welcomed by a society. The moment you know you cannot keep to the laws, you should vacate office. It's as simple as that. If you cannot respect the laws of the country, you have no business answering an officer of that country. You swore an oath to obey the Constitution and laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You cannot be observing it in the breach. That is clearly a breach of an oath of office.
Very quickly, I'm aware that Congress is really impacted by this strike by the tertiary institutions. Like you said, 4 of your unions actually are affected and impacted with this total breakdown in the tertiary institution. Now, the question is, what has been the feedback in terms of IPES? Because these 4 unions that are affected have actually, there's one thing that has been similar in their demands, apart from the demands for allowance or money. The demand again for most of these workers is IPES doesn't work with them. For ASU, they've come up with UTAS. For the remaining unions, they want a different platform that would serve them, not IPES. I'm sure as Congress General Secretary, there must be other feedbacks that you might have gotten from IPES. Would you want to share with us?
Clearly, our universities are there at the center of excellence as the centerpiece of our intelligence operations. So it sounds very backward. It sounds very hurtful. It's like cutting your nose to spite your face when people challenge the product of our tertiary institutions. So if the combined effort of Nigerian universities cannot produce a formula, a project, a process for payment, then there's no basis of calling them universities. And we know that is not the case. So who will you subject? You are talking about subjecting the product to integrity test. Who will do that? A foreigner? Or the expertise you have in your country? So clearly, we are not being very forthright with the situation. There is no basis that will be ignoring the product of the best we have in Nigeria, and then we are talking about backward integration. We are talking about patronizing with Nigeria. We are talking about nationalism. No country will leave product of the country and buy as wage processing from the outside. No, it all shows the lack of sincerity to the desire for educational growth in Nigeria. If not, it shouldn't be an issue. That should have been the sector that would be challenged to help to come up with a foolproof process of remuneration process in the sector. And clearly, they have something that cannot really be assailed, if not for petty politics and undue ego. What ASU has brought to the table is good to go. Same if we allow them to operate the way we now want, which is coming to the table as a family, as people operating in the education sector, wage earners, then we'll put whatever product we want to be gotten out of this system and presented to the government. And if government really wants to be a government of the people, I'm sure the response will be different. The appreciation of the product will be different. Then we can move on from there.
Okay, so finally, I would like to take you up on the federal government announcement about a week ago that it's uncovered 1,005 workers that have fake employment letters, which brings us to the issue of unemployment and maybe, should I say, job racketeering, in quote. Can you tell us, how would you react to this? How would it be that an average Nigerian that is a job seeker would find itself in this situation whereby he or she will be told that he or she has to exit the service because the person has been employed the wrong way?
There are things that ordinarily people shouldn't celebrate, people shouldn't push out to the public. There should be a process, a definitive process of engagement of workers into the federal service. It cannot be an all-comers affair. You get an employment letter from the National Assembly, you get employment letter from Civil Service Commission, you get employment letter from agencies, you get employment letter from directors, you get from House of Rep, you get from the Senate, you get from...
The list goes on and on. So are you saying that there's supposed to be a blueprint that will be announced to these job seekers so they don't fall victim?
That information should be the first person to get sacked, because there must be a definitive process of employment into the service of the federal government of Nigeria. It is hurting for people to make it look like the victim. The poor people they have extorted money from and given letters cannot be the villain in this instance. Those are victims that our officials should be ashamed of to push out. That is a situation that we should be hearing that this person has resigned, this person has been booted out. As a result, you would then ask what happened. They say some letters inadvertently were found in the hands of people that they didn't know how it got. Not the other way around. They can't be celebrating the agony of innocent Nigerians that have been duped by a system that is not transparent. So clearly is the shame of the processes we're undertaking. There must be certainty as to the process of employment. There must be certainty as to where there are vacancies and how those vacancies can be filled. People tell you the children are all over the place begging you, do you know somebody in the National Assembly? They say, if only I can bring a letter from an honorable member, if only I can bring a letter from a distinguished senator, if only I can bring a letter from my local government chairman. That cannot be a criteria for employment. The employment process must be certain. The procedure must be certain. So we cannot join in this macabre celebration of 1,500 or whatever number being found with fake employment letters. It's the shame of not having a certainty of process, certainty of procedure. That cannot be a celebrated news.
Thank you very much for your time. It was an interesting conversation I had with you.
Thank you.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.